you as a brown woman in the ports industry would feel this and recognise it way more than I would as a middle-aged white man, because lots of people in the ports industry look just like I do. This is something that needs to start in primary school. It's something that needs to go all the way through to young people when they're sort of kicking out of university, if that's the route they choose. There is a difference in the confidence and risk-taking profile that I see with many of our male employees or male candidates who are of the mind, yeah, of course I can do it. We are creating an environment where we should be able to deliver on our ambition to get towards and achieve 50% of representation.
Today I'm really happy to welcome our guest, Tom Sawyer, the current CEO for Milford Haven. So welcome, Tom.
Current CEO, what have you heard?
I don't know. We have to say good things. I'm sitting in Milford Haven right now. Wait till I get to London. And today we're going to be talking about male allyship and diversity in general as a whole, and to get your opinion on why it's important, or not maybe for that matter. But I think it'd be really good to just maybe explain to the guest at the beginning a little bit about your journey into the ports industry, because you're not really from ports, are you? This is new to you. So can you maybe just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to join Milford Haven?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, brilliant initiative, Raj, and congratulations on setting up Women in Ports. We're really happy to be supporting this data capture phase and the early phase exploration of it, and it's a fantastic initiative. So our heartfelt congratulations to you, and please expect lots of support from us in championing what you're trying to do around the industry. My mother's favourite subject is clearly me, so very happy to talk about that. My route to the ports industry was almost by accident, really. So I, now currently reside in the post of chief executive, very much a custodial role, based on the Trustport model. It's not a model I knew anything about.
Can you explain to maybe everybody what Trustport is? Because I don't think everybody knows what Trustport is.
So as a Trustport, we essentially own ourselves. We are created through national statute by an act of parliament. In our case, that was 66 years ago now. And what it means is that we are not eligible for public funding, so we don't receive any other funding other than that which we generate ourselves. And we are expected to reinvest in the port. And as a Trustport also, we have the ability to reinvest in our communities and our environment, and to hand our port and our environment on in a better condition than we inherited it in. So that's really attractive. But rewinding slightly to your initial question, my route, I spent my first 26 years in the Royal Air Force, sort of working around the world. Eventually decided to explore something different, went into a defence technology company, looking at defence technology around security, intelligence, decision-making, that sort of stuff. In 2017, went to Qatar. So you can't really be in Qatar and not be exposed to the oil and gas industry, because it is such an oil and gas-driven nation. So was increasingly aware of LNG, oil, and the industry that sat around that. A lot of our friends were involved in it. But then in 2021, saw an advert for a job here. My wife is from Pembrokeshire, always wanted to try and find a reason to work in Pembrokeshire. And one thing led to another. I went from long list to slightly less long list to short list. And eventually the chair at the time offered me the job, and I was absolutely delighted to accept it. And I have to say, it's the best job I've ever had, the only job I ever want. That's why I was reacting a little bit to your current comment, because it is fantastic. We are a port, yes, we move big ships. We're moving 20% of the UK's energy needs every year. We're the Western Energy Gateway to the United Kingdom. We're the largest port in Wales, the third largest by volume in the United Kingdom. We're really important in our community in terms of what we do with and for our community. You were lucky enough to come along last night to the fireworks. We think some 7,000 or 8,000 people came along there in collaboration with Ascona, a growing local business. with the Milford Haven Round Table, with our brilliant Milford Waterfront team and wider volunteering from across the port. That's all about us using that surplus to put back into the community with social events, community link-ups, raising aspiration, and last night, quite simply, celebrating the anniversary of burning Guy Fawkes all the way back in the day, and having a nice time as a result of it. It was fantastic.
I did see your little bunny headphones.
Ears.
Ears, that's it.
Yeah.
Headband, which lit up. So if anybody does get an opportunity, it'd be great for them to see those photos. So I actually did experience that community side of Milford, which is really, really great. I think the one thing that I did notice coming in to visit your port is the demographics of the area that we're in. When we look at diversity and trying to bring that into the ports, why do you think there isn't such an uptake of women joining a lot of the operational roles? I know that you guys have quite a unique story in the sense you do have some really great examples, but why is as a whole do you think that women aren't really joining?
I think there's lots of reasons. What I would say is in terms of our diversity agenda, it's LGBTQ plus, but it's also other sorts of diversity. You as a brown woman in the ports industry would feel this and recognise it way more than I would as a middle-aged white man, because lots of people in the ports industry look just like I do. What I would say is that the challenge we have particularly here is that we are a 96, gusting 98%, and I forget which census said which, white county. So when we are trying to reflect our community and those that sit around us, you have to try very, very hard to find that 2 or 4% that aren't white. When we're looking at the demographics around the representation of women in the port, we do okay at the top end of the business. We're nowhere near the 50% that we want to be at. But our board is 3 out of 7 in terms of female. Our current senior management team is 3 out of 7. We have a management team that of the 35 to 40 managers, as we would classify them as, I think they're in the 25 to 30% layer. So as a port, and I only know this anecdotally, when Vedette, who I think you've spoken to, our HR director, when she goes to other ports, they say, hey, that actually feels quite good. However, when it comes to our on-the-water business, so the thing we exist for, the Port Authority, we have 1 female pilot. We have no females on the boat crew. And we need to address that because first of all, it's a fantastic career. Second of all, it is important that 50% of the world's population are represented in our workforce. And we really value the diversity of thinking and just the different dynamic that having that diversity of gender in the workforce brings. It's really important to us. We're making baby steps where we've got some really good initiatives. So we do a lot around STEM. There's a particular Pembrokeshire focused activity through Pembrokeshire College called Spark, which our HR director is very heavily involved in, and which we've now got the new chief exec of the Celtic Freeport, Luciana, to be the patron of. So really trying to make prominent the opportunities in ports and renewables and the shipping industry in the round far more attractive to women. But this is something that needs to start in primary school. So we do that. It's something that needs to go all the way through to young people when they're sort of kicking out of university, if that's the route they choose, or if they're going to go into something more hands-on. Our college has a fantastic fabrications department where there are increasing numbers of women taking part in that. So, I recognise in terms of the specifics of your question, we're nowhere near where we want to be. We've got a whole load of initiatives, but we have some real challenges in this part of the country. But where there is an opportunity to really accelerate that, we're taking the opportunity to do that. You know, our projects team has a really strong female backbone to it. Our comms and marketing team, actually, you know, there's another issue of a lack of diversity because they are all women. You know, so there is and we have good, strong female role models at various layers in the business. You know, the first female chair of our company, you know, is a very strong role model for all of us. We've got great female board members. I think, you know, my colleagues at SMT level, 3 women I work with, you know, are strong, and they cast a really powerful motivational light across the business. So I think signalling it, backing women when they are looking to enter new roles, because I know I can't provide a commentary on all womankind, but I think there is a difference in the confidence and risk-taking profile that I see with many of our male employees or male candidates who are of the mind, yeah, of course I can do it. Whereas some of the female applicants I speak to are a little bit more tentative, and I think we can certainly help with that. And where we need to, we can propel women forward into those opportunities. But you know, in 5 years' time, I want us to be much closer to 50% representation. I want us to have put a really big dent in our on the water gender mix. I would hope that we are closer to 50-50 across the business. And that's something, you know, there was a major point of conversation at our strategy day. Our board are making it very, very clear to us that they expect to see that movement as well. But it's not, it's not something we're being compelled to do. It's something we absolutely want to do.
So when another port says to you, well, actually, you know, I don't think we need to focus so much on the diversity, but we need to focus more on commercial success or on the success of the communities around you or your transport status, what do you say to somebody when they said, actually, diversity is actually not that important and we just need to just get the right person for the job as opposed to promote women?
Well, first of all, you do need to get the right person for the job. But let's also be clear that why wouldn't it be the case that at least 50% of those right people for the job may well be women and probably are women? There are, in terms of the specifics of your question, what I would say is you're wrong. And actually, we can be all of those things. We can be diverse, we can be commercially successful, we can be supporting our communities at the same time and in a very complementary and positive way. And as a trust port, because we don't have to worry about shareholder dividend, we can pay our dividend in a different way into our communities, into social impact and benefit. So all of that as a trust port, it would be an anathema to me for someone to suggest, and I would argue very strongly against it, that it's a choice between the two. Interesting, isn't it, as well, that it's only when you come to the subject of gender that people talk about best person for the job. When it was largely all blokes in the workplace, it was that was really never a dividing line in terms of whether or not people got the roles or not. It's a strange sort of intellectual friction, I find.
So how do you manage, I guess, the cultural strategy of trying to drive change, where you also have almost legacy of colleagues who've been in the industry, who've been at the port for 30, 40 years, and they've pretty much been like, well, actually, that's how we've always done it. And there was nothing wrong with it, and you want to change a different perspective. How do you bring those guys on board who are a little bit more stubborn to get with the program?
I have to say, my local experience is I don't see that stubbornness. I think the greater challenge is getting women applying for the roles. And where they do apply for the roles, making sure that we are preparing them for those applications. We are doing in-house activities that give them a good chance of competing, because there is always going to be a skills, competency, experience dynamic into all of those fits. I don't think it's a difficult conversation to have. I think we've maybe there are some tricks we can learn. If you are, I think there's good evidence to show in other industries and other sectors that if you are trying to dramatically change a gender mix, maybe think about whether or not you put a single woman in there first. Maybe put a number of women in there together so they can create their own gravitational or force field around them, so that their appearance drives that change. Really good use of apprenticeships as well. I think the apprenticeship level is a really good stage to, because let's be honest, across a bunch of apprentices of similar educational backgrounds, there's probably a homogeneity there in terms of they're either qualified or they're not. They will have very similar experience levels. So at that stage, you can legitimately say, well, our apprentice intake is going to be 50-50, or it's going to be something else. And it's finding ways clearly within the law, but in the interests of the business, which are driving that diversity, we just need to be a little bit more creative. And that can be down to, the imagery we use on an advert. If you want to encourage diversity, well, then don't use a male face on all the adverts you put out. If you've got people who are strong and successful in the business, promote them. But don't just promote the one face, promote many faces, encourage people to reach down and help pull people up. And I think, we've just had a Great Place to Work survey done, and we're really happy with the fact that we've held our certification again. I think we're the first port to get Great Place to Work certification, and again on the issue of gender diversity and diversity in the round, we've seen a 2% increase on that, up to I think 93%. Could be wrong, but it's about that. So our workforce feel that we are welcoming and inclusive. The problem is the numbers don't bear that out.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to really get to grips with that. And that is around how we recruit, where we recruit from. Are we going to start recruiting and relocating people from outside of the county, outside of the region, to attract the people that have got the right skill sets and to drive that diversity? Well, we think we might need to. We also recognise that it's in our interest to be a really diverse and rich and interesting mix of people in the business, because over the next 5 or 10 years, we are going through a dramatic reindustrialisation and transformation on this waterway in terms of having the renewable sector working alongside the current oil and gas sector as that goes through a major transition. And we're going to be in a war for talent. And in that war for talent, we are going, because we are in an international setting here, international business flows up and down. Our terminals, it's a US terminal over there, it's a US and Qatari terminal up at South Hook, Petronas, very heavily Asian influence through the into Dragon. They're all multinational businesses, so we need to look and feel like them a little bit more as well. So I think all of those things mean that not only is it something we passionately want to do and need to do, it's the right thing to do in and of itself, and also for our business.
Have you looked and spoken to other ports and seen maybe some of the initiatives that they're carrying out to bring talent in, and maybe there's something you can learn from them? Is that a conversation that you've had?
Our HR department I've had, I'll be very honest, I haven't had those detailed conversations personally. I've attended a couple of panels at BPA Council and other sessions for that. We have been dealing with our local challenge on a local basis. But we do certainly need to reach out, and that's why we're supporting your initiative, because we do need help. We do need that network to be created. We need those ideas to be shared. There are. I don't want to take away from the fact there's some really good stuff we're doing, and we're starting to see the benefit of that. We've got our first senior management team member who is a local lady who's quite literally grown up through the business. And that's success for us. We've got our workforce telling us that they feel that we are diverse and inclusive. To my point, though, the data doesn't yet show that. So we need to make sure that feeling is magnetic and is drawing greater diversity into the business. And we also are clearly projecting something positive to our communities as well, because 5 years ago there was 50% or less support for what we were trying to achieve as a port, and our latest stakeholder survey tells us that there's now 80%. So in terms of what it looks and feels like to people in the business, and it's welcoming, and the business wants more diversity and inclusion, and what our communities and stakeholders are telling us, because our stakeholders include our customers and our communities, we are creating an environment where we should be able to deliver on our ambition to get towards and achieve 50% of representation. But the other thing I would say is, what we haven't been good at doing is gathering data in the round. So that there's a data issue for us, because yes, gender mix, really, really important. But let's remember, gender is one part of diversity. And there's a whole load of other things that we're not yet measuring and accounting for. And so that's the big project for us next year in terms of developing that detailed campaign over the next 5 years to deliver on those goals.
So, as you know, I'm all about data-driven decisions, and I feel that in order to identify the problem, you need the data. Just going back to role models and impact. So, obviously, your new chair, Dr Siân George, first female chair from Milford Haven. What has been the impact, and what has been the perceptions for not just young women, but men as well within the workplace? How was that landed?
You need to ask them, because of course those are very personal feelings that people have. I can only speak for myself. I have found it, I was very proud that we were able to announce that. It was, the result of Siân's appointment was the result of an open national, could have been international, selection process. She brings a huge amount of experience from public and private sector, and she, stands tall as an example of what we all want to be in the business. So, in terms of that leadership figure, bearing in mind she's been in post 4 months, very, very positive indeed, and she's going to be great for our business. I think it's important for people in the business to be able to identify with and respect whoever the leader is. And the fact that she's a woman and an influential, knowledgeable, charismatic leader is really, really important. And I, personally already benefit from my interactions with her and her different perspectives and outlooks, and which is exactly what you want from a chair, because that's why they're here. Yeah.
So just thinking about maybe giving the audience some practical steps. So you obviously don't have the lived experience of a woman, but you're somebody who really champions women and their diversity agenda. What do you feel other men can do? Because essentially, if you look at the industry, men are going to be the driving force for that because they're the majority. What practical steps can men take to be really good allies?
First of all, don't be a dick. There are a lot of people who, of my 50% of the world population, who have some deep-seated and, for me, incomprehensible blockage when it comes to the issue of diversity. They apply and I was sort of badly articulating it earlier, there is some sort of weird double standard that is applied to the ability of an individual to access the workforce, a female. So, and let me bring my military experience back into this. And it might be a really poor example, but I've used it before, and it seems to have some sort of power. I used to be in a part of the Air Force that was exclusively male. And the main reason was that there were question marks over the physical ability of women to do the role, the specific role, and that there was a sense that having women present in the workforce, particularly in some more exacting and austere environments, that women would in some way undermine the fabric and cohesion of the military fighting force. To which I would often say, okay, well, that's fine. If that is your starting, it's not fine, but I'll accept the starting premise of that. But we'll accept people who are failing fitness tests, are overweight, are liars, debtors, cheats, untrusted. So all of those things fundamentally undermine the cohesion and fabric of a military fighting force. So you're saying that women are on par with that, are you? So we treat women as debtors, liars, untrustworthy, overweight, unfit men. And eventually you come to the realization, actually, by opening it up, some women will choose to enter those careers and others won't. And actually, the overall impact has been massively beneficial to the armed forces in terms of the resilience of a workforce, the feeling of the workplace. And in most cases, in the workforce, in my experience of it, the problem was never the women. The problem was always the men and their attitude to the women. So, yeah, I think my big piece of advice would be, don't be a dick.
So, just thinking about legacy, obviously I'm not saying you're leaving Milford Haven, so no panic attacks, guys. What do you hope to leave behind the legacy of Tom Sawyer at Milford Haven?
I've never really thought about that. I don't really think one day to the next. So what would I like Milford Haven to look like in 5 years' time? I would like us to have a rich, vibrant, diverse workforce with gusting towards 50% diversity across the business, recognising that there may be challenges in certain areas to achieve that, but that's a goal we should set ourselves, and we should. I'd be happy to fail trying, but we absolutely must try. I want us allied to that to be an organisation that where last year we put £400,000 back into the community, so about 10% of our operating profit. We want to be doing £1 million in 5 years' time. I want to see a significant amount of that going into raising the aspirations of young people in our community. They see every day a multi-billion-pound industry plying up and down the waterway. You can just about see the chimney pots over my shoulder, Raj, of some of the houses and communities that sit behind us, who represent some of the 32% of impoverished and below poverty line families that we have in the county. So how are we going to get them to access that? 50% of those young people will be female. How do we draw them into it in a way that they haven't hitherto been drawn into it in terms of careers on the water or adjacent to the water? Because port jobs are great jobs. They pay significantly more than jobs in the general population, the general workforce do, and we need to make sure that access happens. And then on top of that, make sure that our business is relevant to our customers. Part of that, again, is diversity, making sure that we are seen as a great place to work and the employer of choice around the county, because we want to make sure that the great people are coming to work here. And on top of that, when we've got all that, when we've got the great people and that diverse, rich mix, we're unstoppable in terms of the service we can provide to our customers, which ultimately is what we exist to do. And maintaining our place as the UK's Western Energy Gateway. It will be different.
Yeah.
We'll have different ships moving up and down the waterway, but we'll still be moving big ships. And just different and more and better. And again, let's go back to firework night last night. I had a little look at the social media this morning, that the amount of positivity there is around our waterway communities is absolutely incredible. This is a place that has accepted change down the centuries, and the communities around this waterway are ready for that next big change and getting behind it. And one of the ways we get behind it is by making sure that every young person in our county feels excited and able to engage with that. And more diversity is a route to doing that.
So finally, in 3 words, what should women in ports be, according to you?
At the top.
Good. Thank you so much, Tom. This has been a great pleasure to having you here today. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being my guest.